Well, good morning, church. Happy future 4th of July. So, may you eat a brat, a burger, and a hot dog all in the same meal. So the title of my lesson today is The Faith of Two, and we'll be in 1 Samuel chapter 13, and we're going to talk about Jonathan and the armor bearer. And I love this story, and we'll jump into the New Testament there at the end of the close. But also, I just want to plug something. I just want to say that I'm very proud of this church. I think in just the transition that we've had in leadership here. But more, I think, is just the day-to-day thing. So for those who are not members here, we've been doing a 40-day fast, and we're halfway through it. So anyway, I've been encouraged by a lot of the things that you guys have given up during these 40 days, to the prayer requests that you've sent in. Even my wife and I were like amending prayers because a lot of the prayers have already been answered, which has been really encouraging. So, so, I'm just fired up for that front. But we are breaking the fast. So, just so you know. And we're going to break it together as a family, and that will be July 15th. We're going to have an outdoor service. It's going to start at 9 a.m., so it's not scorching hot yet. But we're going to break our fast after a small devotional as a church together. And we'll break the fast there, and we'll be at the Stars and Stripes Park off Lake Hefner up there. So great family time. Looking forward to that. Breaking the fast, and we'll probably do another large fast sometime in the future. So it's inevitable. So Jesus does. Yeah, someday we won't have to fast anymore. So, and I want to encourage you with this one. This is going to kind of wrap up my series, kind of jumping through the Old Testament. Just talking about faith. And mostly it's been listening to God, obeying God, a lot of that material. But I haven't really talked about much about one another relationships and how vital that is in taking steps of faith. We live in an amazing time, I think, on this side of the cross, on the value of faithful relationships. Where our faith is not necessarily just in our relationship with each other, but our faith in Jesus in between those relationships. And I think that's what makes marriages so strong in the kingdom of God. I think that's what makes friendships so strong. I think it's what makes child-parent relationships so strong in the kingdom, is that it's not just focused on either party there, but focused on Jesus. And I think a great example of this in the Old Testament is Jonathan and a no-name, just an armor bearer. Some guy who is just with Jonathan to carry his stuff around. And kind of how I felt like my freshman year in high school when my middle brother was a senior. I was his armor bearer. I was always having to carry his stuff around all the time. So, but to kind of help paint the scene of what's going on here, the way that it describes the war between the Philistines and the Israelites is bitter war all of Saul's years. And it's just bitter war. And Saul is king for what I believe is 42 years, something like that. 42 years of just bitter war with your neighboring country there. And honestly, the Israelites are not favored on this battlefield most of the time. So they have God, they kicked out most of the Canaanites, but the Philistines were left there. They weren't part of the people to be kicked out. In fact, the Philistines remain an issue even in David's time, but for Saul's is a time of peace. That war is finally ended after all these things, but some of these great moments of faith occur because the Philistines are there. You think, man, why would you lead the Philistines there? Maybe their strongest army in Canaan was left alone, untouched But yet, because of that war, all of these people demonstrated amazing faith. David and Goliath would have never happened if the Philistines weren't there. This moment would have never happened. I think all of the victories that it talks about in Israel's underdog moments of trusting God would have never happened. Things that make you go, And to help kind of paint the picture here, in 1 Samuel, verse 13 and 16. Now, I'm not a soldier or know much about war other than video games, so not that I'm going to jump into some great war details here. But there are some fundamentals that even from a Call of Duty perspective, I would understand this is a bad situation. So in 1 Samuel 13, verse 16, it starts with these words, Saul and his son Jonathan. I didn't put a PowerPoint together. I meant to clarify that. And that's because we moved out of our house this week. So to be more like Jesus. So we have no home. But hopefully we close on our house here in a couple weeks. So, but in verse 16 it says, Saul and his son Jonathan and the men with them were staying in Gibeah in Benjamin, my name, while the Philistines camped at Michmash. None of these places are that important to you anyway. So raiding parties went out from the Philistine camp in 3 detachments. One turned toward Ophrah in the vicinity of Saul, another toward Beth Horon, and the third toward the borderland overlooking the valley of Zeboim, facing the desert. So there is an army of the Philistines there. There's just 3 raiding parties are just going out there. Special ops, just to terrorize the Israelite people. So they're in a standstill before the army's battle here, but they're like, let's just go terrorize the civilians. And so they send out 3 battalions there in 3 different directions just to terrorize the Israelites. Now, here's another curious fact that they throw into this. It says in verse 19, not a blacksmith could be found in the whole land of Israel, because the Philistines had said, otherwise the Hebrews would make swords or spears. So all Israel went down to the Philistines to have their plowshares, mattocks, axes, and sickles sharpened. The price was 2/3 of a shekel for sharpening plowshares and mattocks, and 1/3 of a shekel for sharpening forks and axes, and for repointing goads. And you're like, what did we just read? And this is the difference between the Bronze Age and the Iron Age as far as war is concerned. The Israelites didn't enter the Iron Age. They're still using bronze weapons, which is a huge disadvantage for them. They are behind as far as technology is gone. They're bringing a knife to a gunfight. You know what I mean? That's what's going on there, and no one is being trained in this technology. And the Philistines are now able to completely oppress them because they don't have this technology. Not only is their army ill-equipped, but on top of that, they are making money. They're just stacking the Benjamins because everything from farming to day-to-day life, for them to even make money, they have to go through the blacksmiths in Philistine. So on the day of the battle, not a soldier with Saul or Jonathan had a sword or spear in his hand. Only Saul and his son Jonathan had them. Now a detachment of Philistines had gone out to the pass at Michmash. One day, Jonathan, son of Saul, who's the king there, and who later becomes best friends with David, said to the young man bearing his armor, come, let's go over to the Philistine outpost on the other side. So he did not tell his father. Saul was staying at the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree in Majon. With him were about 600 men, among whom was Ahijah, who was wearing an ephod. So he's the priest. He's the son of Ichabod's brother Ahitub. I'm going to struggle with these. Son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, which is the priest we talked about, Samuel and Eli, back in the day, a month ago. The Lord's priest in Shiloh. No one was aware that Jonathan had left. So Jonathan, the armies are at a standstill. God's army is just camped up under this pomegranate tree. Nothing's happening. There's no battle plan. They're just waiting. So Jonathan has this brilliant idea to not tell anyone and just kind of tells his armor bearer, hey, let's just go to the outpost. Let's see what's going on. Like, maybe we'll devise a plan here. He doesn't say, hey, let's just go conquer the Philistines in this moment. He's just like, let's just go see. Let's just go over. Let's go check out what's going on in the enemy's camp there. So, in verse 4, it says, on each side of the pass that Jonathan intended to cross to reach the Philistine outpost was a cliff. One was called Bozez and the other Sinah. One cliff stood to the north toward Michmash, which is the Philistine, and the other south toward Gibeah, which is where the Israelites' army is. So they found themselves in this valley. They're on their way. They crossed in one side, and then they're now in the middle. So they're between two giant cliffs. The one they just came down, where the Israelites are, and then the one that they have to go up to see the Philistine army. And maybe they're reconsidering their plan here. Jonathan said to his young armor bearer, come, let's go over to the outpost of those uncircumcised fellows, talking about the Philistines. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. So Jonathan's faith, I think, grew. They decided in this plan, hey, let's just go see what's going on. And then as they leave one cliff and they come up to another cliff, I could just see them looking between two places. And Jonathan says, well, we're not going back. We're going forward. But he's not saying just to go see. He says, maybe God's going to act. Here's the armor bearer's response in verse 7. Do all that you have in mind. Go ahead, I'm with you, heart and soul. You know, do you think that encouraged Jonathan? You know, I don't know if you've ever had this moment where you've had a crazy idea and you didn't want to tell people, right? And then maybe just test the waters with somebody. You'll throw out an idea. And, you know, I wonder what would have happened if the armor bearer was like, no, I'm just going to stay here. If that would have changed Jonathan's plan of what was going on here. Yeah, I wonder if Jonathan's plan would have got shot down if he shared it with his dad or with any of the other soldiers that are along the way. Here they are between two cliffs, deciding that they're going to be able to rout this enemy army with just two of them. In verse 8, Jonathan says, come then, we'll cross over toward the men and let them see us. I don't know if this is a good plan. If they say to us, wait there until we come to you, we will stay where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, come up to us, we will climb up because that will be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands. Wow. This is a very interesting plan because you think like, okay, let's plan through this, right? Maybe we'll feel a little more like special ops. We'll sneak into the camp, we'll kill important people, and we'll sneak out or something. We'll create chaos. Jonathan's brilliant battle plan is we're just going to yell up to the top of the cliff, let them see us, and whatever they decide affects what we're going to do. Wow. And his plan is that, look, if they say they're going to come down to us, guess we're going to fight down here. But if they call out for us to come to them, this is a sign that we're supposed to go into this camp and we're going to kick some butt. Wow. So, but there is no contingent plan. We're going to fight. Either we're going to fight in this valley or we're going to fight in the cliff on their turf. Wow. Think about this for a second. Just think about it for a second. It's a more powerful army, and we're just going to show ourselves. But it almost seems like the more obstacles we come across, we feel like the more God's going to hand them into our hands. You know, Jonathan's conviction was whether by many or by few, God can do this. Now, where did Jonathan get this faith from? I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure this is one of those reasons why him and David became best friends. Because, you know, in 2 chapters later, when David and Goliath show up, Jonathan's nowhere to be found. But I have a good feeling Jonathan would have been the one to say to Goliath. But what Saul does after this moment never allows Jonathan to get back on the front lines again. Someone else had to step up. But I think as they go through it, it's, look, we're making it obvious to the enemy, but we're not making it obvious to our own people. Seems like a bad plan, right? Yeah. None of the other Israelites know what we're doing, but the enemy knows exactly what we're doing. Verse 11, it says, so both of them showed themselves to the Philistine outpost. Look, said the Philistines, here comes the trash talking. The Hebrews are crawling out of their holes they were hiding in. The men of the outpost shouted to Jonathan and his armor bearer, come up to us and we'll teach you a lesson. I don't know what the real Hebrew is, but I'm kind of curious how that came out, how they translated that. So some real, 4,000 years ago trash talking. So Jonathan said to his armor bearer, climb up after me, the Lord has given them into the hand of Israel. Now, did God ever tell him this is what the plan is? We're like figuring it out as we go. And, I think a lot of the instances we talked about is that people were listening. They were listening to God. And God made it clear, right? This one was kind of, okay, we need to do something. Something's got to happen. But we're not really hearing God's voice. And so we climb down in the valley. We're like, okay, I'm with you heart and soul. Whatever's going to happen here. And think God makes it more and more clear as they continue to make actions. It makes me think about with Moses, with the Red Sea. It's a very interesting concept that throws out there when Moses is like, God, do something. The Egyptian army's right here and we're against the sea and we're 6 million people and we're not an army. You got to do something. And God's like, what are you waiting for? Open up the Red Sea. And I think, why would that come across as an idea to Moses, right? But then Moses has the conviction. He says, don't fear these Egyptians. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. And it was one of those things where God's like, act, move. Why are you waiting for my voice? Move, take some actions. I'm going to be with you along the way. So Jonathan climbed up using his hands and feet with his armor bearer right behind him. The Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer followed and killed behind him. In that first attack, Jonathan and his armor bearer killed some 20 men in an area about half an acre, which is about the size of about half a football field. To give you an idea of what just happened here is that there's all this trash talking. And have you guys ever seen American football? Oh, none. Okay. And but there's 22 men on the field. And I don't have Aaron here. He's at a wedding this weekend. But Aaron played football for OU. But these are big guys, you know what I mean? And Jonathan, his armor bearer, it's 11 on 11 in football. Today, it's 20 versus 2, you know what I mean? And you're in the red zone. And Jonathan and, his armor bearer here are like, okay, we're going to run a trick play here and get through these 20 the 20, opponents of ours. No, they're like, hey, we're just going to run it up the middle. That's what we're going to do. And, and he goes, I'm going to lead the way and you got the rock, behind you. And I'm going to go along the way. And that's what happens. And in a small amount of distance, they just killed 20 people. then God starts to move. Verse 15, then panic struck the whole army, those in the camp and field. And those in the outpost and the raiding parties, you remember those other guys terrorizing? And the ground shook. It was a panic sent by God. And yeah, I think there's just certain things that we just can't do by ourselves. Only God can do some of these things. Jonathan thought, hey, let's just go up to one of these outposts and rout one of these groups. God's like, let's get them all at once. You know what I mean? You know, maybe they're feeling pretty good. We just killed 20 people, right? And then the ground starts shaking. And what was a more powerful army is now in a mass panic. The ground is shaking. And what does Jonathan and his armor bearer do? Man, they just keep on running that ball right up the middle. But not only them, in verse 16, they fire up a nation. Saul's lookouts at Gibeah and Benjamin saw the army melting away in all directions. Then Saul said to the men who were with him, muster the forces and see who has left us. Then they did. It was Jonathan and his armor bearer who were not there. Saul said to Anahijah, bring the ark of God. At that time it was with the Israelites. While Saul was talking to the priests, the tumult in the Philistine camp increased more and more. So Saul said to the priests, withdraw your hand. Then Saul and all his men assembled and went to the battle. They found the Philistines in total confusion, even striking each other with their swords. Those Hebrews who had previously been in the with the Philistines had gone up with them to their camp, went over to the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. When all the Israelites who had hidden in the hill country of Ephraim heard the Philistines were on the run, they joined the battle in hot pursuit. So the Lord rescued Israel that day, and the battle moved on beyond Beth Aven, which is outside of Israel, and there into Philistine country. You know, the faith of two, Jonathan and the armor bearer. And they were kind of like, we'll figure it out as we go here. But God sent such an amazing panic over this group that they started fighting each other. And it says that the tumult grew more and more. The earthquake became more and more violent. And then to the point where Saul's like, stop trying to petition God. He's here. Like, we got to go. We got to assemble. We got to be a part of that. And then other Israelites join in. And then people, it seems like they grab like pots and pans out of their hiding places. And they start running after this army of the Iron Age, you know, kicked out by the Israelites. Whether by many or by few. Whether it was just Jonathan or the armor bearer, or it was the whole Israelite nation that came together. God was going to move. But you know, he didn't send the earthquake first. He didn't send it first. Yeah, I think that's what's so important in the relationships that we have is that, you know what, there's times where we need to be the Jonathan, where I think we need to step out. You know, where we're like, man, God, it's not only that he can move, man, God is moving. And he was the only person who saw it of the 600 soldiers that were there, including the king. And you know what? From Jonathan's faith, the armor bearer saw it too. But, you know, the armor bearer didn't shoot down the idea, you know, I'm just with you heart and soul. Whether you're the initiator or you're the encourager of faith, there's both a role to be played there. You know, where do you feel like you're being terrorized? Where you feel like the victory is not here? Where do you feel like the odds are stacked against you? You know, I think what separated Jonathan from the rest of us is that he still believed that God was going to move. And I think it's just one of those things we can't let go of faith. But I think, that's why we need people in our lives to encourage each other that, sometimes we need to be the Jonathan for other people. Sometimes, I've been in stages in my life where people had higher expectations than myself. And they'll just come into my life and they'll be like, no, this is not your standard, you know what I mean? You're better than this. You can break through this wall with faith. You know what I mean? And my expectation for myself is so low that I need other people to come in to raise the bar to where it needs to be again. You know what? Are you being that to anybody currently right now? What's the faith expectation you're putting out for other people? I wonder if we're encouraging lack of faith rather than full faith in God. Who are you? Are you King Saul under a pomegranate tree? Or are you between two cliffs with no exit plan? We're putting our trust in God. Amen. You and me. You know what I mean? Yeah. No wonder David and Jonathan became friends. No wonder they became best of friends. You know what? And to some credit of armor bearers, David was Saul's armor bearer before he slayed Goliath. Whether you're the son of a king or just carrying the prince's stuff, it doesn't matter. There's a victory there. Let's look at it in the New Testament. Let's go to Romans 10. And we'll come to a close on this point. In Luke chapter 10 and verse 1. Sorry, I said Luke. Go to Luke 10. Wow, like it didn't even register when you said Romans. All right, in Luke chapter 10, in verse 1, it should be labeled, Jesus sends out the 72. After this, the Lord appointed 72 others, that means on top of the 12 apostles, and sent them out 2 by 2, ahead of him, to every town and place where he was about to go. He told them, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Go, I'm sending you out like lambs among wolves. Do not take a purse or bag or sandals, and do not greet anyone on the road. I feel like this is Jonathan and the armor bearer. I'm sending you out before I get there. Isn't that exactly what happened? Didn't God work in the heart of Jonathan that, man, why are we sitting here? Man, we got the God of gods, you know what I mean? Why are we scared? And I think we're meant to be sent out 2 by 2 as we address things of faith. I don't think you're just supposed to sit there and wherever you normally have a quiet time or where you go to pray or wherever you walk, and you're just supposed to battle all your issues of faith by yourself. No, I think we need people with us who are heart and soul. When we fall on our face, when we want to give up. Proverbs says, although a righteous man falls down 7 times, he always gets up. And I don't think you're righteous because of how holy you really are. But I think righteous people, as far as Proverbs is concerned, have great relationships. And he's saying it out, the harvest is plentiful. Like, no one else in that army saw the victory there. But I'm wondering, look, are we seeing the victory for this church? Do we see the harvest as plentiful for us? Not just some other church that's out there, but here. But if anything's the issue, it's not the harvest field. It's the workers. We're not praying for the harvest field to change. We're praying for the workers to change. And that's what happened in the Lord's army. The workers changed. They went from 600 soldiers not willing to go into battle to 2 who are willing to take on the whole army by themselves. Are you ready to take on this whole harvest field by yourself with someone by your side? Then maybe you're not a worker. But he says, look, I'm sending you out like lambs among wolves. I'm not sending you out as wolves among lambs. We're ill-equipped for this harvest field. In fact, he says he strips them of equipment. Don't take a purse or bag. Don't take money with you. Don't take extra sandals. Man, just trust. And I think it's just one of those things, are we becoming too dependent on equipment? The website's going to reach out for us. Ever watch The Office? No, I'm kidding. Or do we feel like, our church sign outside is going to be the thing that's going to bring people in? You know what? Or maybe it's our equipment or our faith in other people that someone else is going to do it. No. You. You are going to do it. God wants to use you to do it. Amen. You know how I know that? In verse 17. These no-name 72 people who were probably amongst the 3,000 that got baptized on Pentecost. The 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. No names. These are no-name people. And here's Jesus' response. He replied, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. You ever seen lightning fall from heaven? It doesn't fall slowly. No. It just looks like that. Like lightning would just appeared, right? Until you see one of those slow motion moments. Remember, you see the lightning just kind of cage out there into a net, and you're like, whoa, man, that's amazing to slow it down. But Satan is not losing slowly here. It's not like he's just stumbling. He fell out of heaven like lightning. Why? Because 2 by 2, people went out in faith, and Satan had no power over them. Who kicked him out of heaven? Did Jesus do it? Verse 19, he says, I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. Harm you is a relative term. However, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. You know what, the thing about Jonathan and the armor bearer that not to be confused with is that I don't think Jonathan was looking to be the hero, to be lifted up, to have statues made out of him. I think he just wanted to see God's people win. And I think that's what we need to do is that, look, we just want to win. We want the team to win. We're not doing this because I want to study the Bible with 10 different people and, I want to baptize Westbrook. I don't know. I'd love to do that. But, it's just, what? Is that what we're really looking for? But no, look, we've already won the victory. Whether you die, you get criticized, you lose a battle here or there, we've won, baby. The victory's already there. We're between a cliff and another cliff. You're already there. And there's no turning back to the old life. We're giving that up. We're going forward. We're going into the battlefield. And if God is willing, He's going to bring the earthquake. Look, we just got to show up. We got to get on our hands and knees and climb up the cliff. Does God just levitate them up there? Does God kill those first 20? Those 20 just fell on His sword? No. There was some fighting. They're like, man, this is going to get exhausting here right after a while. Man, an earthquake came. God delivered. Satan fell out of heaven like lightning. Romans, here we go. Romans 16, verse 20. If you don't know this scripture, know it. Paul has never visited the church in Rome, but he has great confidence that they're about to do something amazing. And as he closes out his letter here, he says, the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. Let that marinate for a little bit. The God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. Okay, the God of peace, who's operating here? Look, he's about to crush Satan. Satan is about to be crushed by whom? By you. By your feet. God is about to use you to crush Satan under your foot. This wasn't an eyeball-to-eyeball match. God is putting them under your foot. You just need to press down. And what do you kill? What do you crush with your feet? Bugs. Bugs. Satan gets reduced from this roaring lion going around looking for someone to devour to a bug under your boot. Because of God. God is looking to bring peace to the world. And he wants to use us to do it. God was looking to bring peace to Israel, despite all of its disadvantages. And you know what? He crushed that army like a bug. You know, look, if you don't have faith, get there. Get a buddy. Get an armor bearer. Someone who's going to be with you heart and soul. Because Satan is about to get crushed in this metroplex. By your feet. But, you know, that's why we got to partner up and get a buddy system going. Buddy. And, you know, I think as we go forward, how are we going to do this? The plan has not changed since the gospel 2,000 years ago. We're going to partner up 2 by 2. We're going to do the work. We're going to go into the harvest field. And Satan's going to fall like lightning from the sky. The God of peace is bringing peace into our world, and he's using this church. Do you believe it? Do you know that he's going to put Satan under your boot? Now, does that mean that you're going to get every miracle you ask for? Does that mean every person you're going to interact with is going to become a disciple? But Satan will be crushed. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we're going into battle here. We're going into the harvest field. You know what? And the workers are few. The problem's not the harvest field. The problem's not the army. The problem's not the obstacles that's in front of us. The problem is us. Where's your faith at? Where are you encouraging people's faith right now? And if you're not an encourager, what's stopping you? Why would you hold back someone from seeing the faith that's in front of them? I think the real issue is we don't know people's faith in this room. I bet you don't know the person to your left or right, you know, their biggest struggles or the faith obstacles or what they believe how God is going to use them. That's got to change after today. We got to know. Jonathan laid out the plan, and the armor bearer's like, okay, let's go. And then he's like, well, you know what? Let's just go show ourselves to them and fight them. And he's like, I'm with you, heart and soul. And I think, look, what we're going to do is just 2 people can change the faith of this church. Yeah. Just with 2 people. From those 2 people, it created faith in an army of 600 people ill-equipped for battle. And then on top of that, it brought in some other mercenary Hebrew people who had some sort of interacting with that army there. And then it had people with pots and pans coming out of holes in the mountains that like, we're in hot pursuit of this army now. But I wonder if we've been on our heels. Satan's been throwing the big punches at us, and we're the ones flinching. It's time we start throwing some punches back. Now, the thing is, when you go on the offensive, you're going to get hit back. The blows are going to come. Look, if you're going to take a step of faith, Satan's going to flinch at you. Now, who are you going to be? Are you going to get intimidated? Are you going to run away? Are you going to go back on the plan that you initially went out for? Or are you going to wait for the earthquake to come through? Are you going to wait for the lightning to strike? Are you going to wait for the bug to get under your boot? Wait on the Lord if that's the case. But look, we're going to buddy ourselves. We're going to have a fellowship here where I'm with you heart and soul. The ups and downs of this victory ride that we're going on, we're at least going to get the victory in the end. You know, when you play a football game, it doesn't matter what the score is in the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, or the fourth quarter until the time's done. That's the only time that the points actually matter. Because when teams feel like they've already won and the game's not over yet, sometimes just slips through their hands. Is that going to be our church, though? Do we feel like we're just going to, look, we got the victory. Let's just sit back on our salvation and enjoy ourselves. And Satan's going to come back and snuff out this church. Look, if we're looking to operate as a church, we got to go forward here. And you know what? The God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. To God be the glory. Amen.
Thanks, Ben.